Our next session is a panel discussion titled Practical Sustainability Tips, Tricks and Tools that can be immediately applied to your business, chaired by Kim Antonio. As you would know, I'm sure, Kim is the head of DPIRD's Food Innovation Program, leading several ESG initiatives for the food and beverage industry in WA, including sustainable packaging initiatives, a food waste reduction project with Curtin University and the Stop Food Waste CRC, and the low-cost digital manufacturing project with Cambridge University that we heard about earlier today. Kim has a behavioural science background and over 25 years' experience in the private, public and not-for-profit sectors. He believes that well-planned ESG outcomes are mutually achievable with growth and economic prosperity. Please welcome Kim Antonio to the stage, who will then introduce the rest of the panel.
So our panel this afternoon, I'll ask Ralph Moyle to join us on stage. Ralph has over 40 years of experience working in food processing in Australia, including 30 years in packaging. And Ralph has helped many businesses implement smarter packaging solutions and reduce waste. Great to have you here with us, Ralph. Francesca. Don't know where they're all hiding. Most of you would have heard Francesca yesterday when she presented. So Francesca Goodman-Smith is with the Food Waste CRC, and she's the project leader for the Transform project, transforming food waste into new products, and we saw some examples of that yesterday. And Sam Oakden. Sam is the head of the Australian Food Pact at Stop Food Waste Australia, and as we discussed yesterday, the Pact is a pre-competitive collaboration that helps make the Australian food system more sustainable and resilient and more circular. And finally, we have Sara. Sara Orr.
Sara. Oh.
And Sara is a sales executive and quality assurance manager with Trandos Farms. And for those of you who don't know, Trandos Farms is Western Australia's largest grower of corn and beans, with properties across Western Australia from the south to the north. And I thought we'd actually kick off, Sara, with you telling us a little bit about the sustainable journey that Trandos Farms have been on in the time you've been with them.
Yeah, so I've been with Trandos Farms for 26 years. So in those 26 years, we've seen a huge growth in sustainability and what sustainability means for our business. I think one of the biggest things for us in the sustainability is our waste, what we were doing with our waste. So obviously we're a farm, we process a lot of product, a lot of green waste is generated. So the issue was, do we dig a big hole and bury it, or what do we do with it? So over the years we've fed it to cattle, dug big holes and buried it, that sort of thing. But it got to the point where our business had grown so large with having 4 growing properties and lots of customer base that we had to do something that was on a more permanent basis. So for us, we turned our packing facility into a process facility where all our waste is interlocked into one basically big conveyor belt system, and it all exits our packing facility into a shed, and we have 400 head of cattle that waste goes to. So that was sort of our first foundation of getting rid of the waste sustainably. And then we went to, okay, we do a crop that we harvest and everything's left in the ground and it takes 3 goes to roach your hood under. How do we better that? How do we roach your under it quicker, use less diesel, use less wages, because labour become a massive issue? For us, it was chopping the corn stalk, baling it and storing it up for our off-season. So in our off-season, we grow in Broome and our cattle are sitting in Gingin. We're not going to move all that cattle up to Broome. So for us, it was about being able to feed that cattle and utilise all the products and resources that we had at hand. So for us, that was our biggest issue, and one we're still working on, one we're still trying to roll out within all of our farms and across not only our corn crop but our bean crop. But that was probably our biggest waste and sustainability hero. I guess Another one is packaging. I know Kim's sort of followed our journey in packaging over the years. Over the years, you know, everything was highly packaged. We've worked together with a lot of different departments, a lot of different packaging companies to come to a point where how we can get to the most minimal packaging possible for our company. So we've done that by removing plastic, removing trays. We started off with loads of overwrap, loads of trays, loads of stickers. So over the years, we've implemented machinery that, you know, reduces just to bags. A couple of years ago, we received some funding to implement some capital expenditure items to introduce a shrink wrapping machine. So we've gone from wrapping a 3 or 4 pack cob of corn on a tray and then overwrapping it to overnight reducing it to just the wrap. So we've removed the tray. Overnight, that reduced our plastic usage by 82%. So for us, obviously, it's a huge sustainability story, but for us, it was, how do we get rid of plastic? We just wanted to get rid of plastic. It wasn't, the sustainability thing actually wasn't even on the radar at that stage. It was, how do we do a good job of getting rid of plastic within our company? Because it's the right thing to do, not use bundles and bundles of plastic. So for us, that was the best way to do that. And we celebrated that. We labelled our product. We went to all of the chains and said, hey, this is what we're doing. How do we celebrate that? And, you know, you did have pushback. They didn't want you messing with their packaging and playing with their artwork, but eventually they come on board and we celebrated that and we labelled things for a good period of time to get that customer awareness out there that that's what we were doing.
We talked yesterday about the role of the SME in addressing this issue of reduced waste, reduced packaging. And the Trandos Farms example was a really interesting example to observe from afar at the department, because I remember a conversation with Jim about the challenge you face with the purchasing habits of customers. So, you know, it's many years ago now, Jim said to me, the most sustainable packaging for corn is what corn comes in.
Absolutely.
The husk that it has. It's good in terms of shelf life. It's, you know, you can cook in you don't have to put it in a container, you just cook it in the husk, which I've done ever since. But he said the problem for us is if you've got corn in the husk on the shelf and it's sitting next to corn that's been dehulled and is in a plastic package, at the end of the day, all the corn in the package will be sold and the corn in the husk won't, because the consumer wants to see the product. They want that wrapped product. So, you know, it highlighted that challenge in terms of the business can do as much as the business can do, but ultimately there's still the issue of addressing what consumers want. And we see the same thing with celery, that celery will have what appears to be a meaningless piece of plastic wrapped around it, but customers will levitate towards the celery with the plastic branding on it. And changing that, I think, we talked about this, Phil, when we were running the packaging webinar series, that as an industry, we feel the industry is actually going to have to play a role in educating the consumer, because where else is that message going to come from, to be honest? So we all celebrated your success with the reduced packaging, but recognised the frustration you went through.
Yeah.
Sara, I remember also that some of the work you guys are doing on farm, and it blends into this whole sustainable picture, was around moving away from chemical control to biological control of many of the pests. Could you share a little bit of that with the audience as well?
Yeah, so obviously chemical control on a farm is expensive, insanely expensive, and very labour intensive. So we work quite closely with biological control to overcome the challenges of having insects, disease, things like that in the field by using natural insects and bacterias in the field that will eat predators and control diseases out in the field without actually having to spray, to purchase a spray and putting the spray into the soil.
Great. Sam, I'm going to ask you a question about that interaction with consumers. You spoke yesterday about the two key areas of food loss, from production through processing, accounting for 39%, and then at the consumer end, 51%. So between those two, effectively 90% of all food loss. how do we as small businesses and agencies looking to support that sector, how do we engage with the consumer to really change the messaging around the amount of product that's wasted at the consumer end?
Yeah, it's a really big area, isn't it? And if there was a silver bullet, I think we would have done it. But I think the key message and the key takeaway in terms of interacting with our consumers is to tell our stories. When we're doing the right thing, how do we continue to, and this is on all of us, it's not just on the businesses, but all of us that are aware of what's happening and the rationale for the decisions we're making, how do we communicate that better? How do we communicate that trade-off between packaging and food waste? How do we use packaging where necessary to tell that brand story, to build that relationship with our consumer so they understand our business, understand what we're trying to achieve, and then they'll go with us on that journey. And I think the other key point there is it's a journey. We're not going to do that overnight. We're not going to change consumer habits overnight, but all of us collectively can start sharing those stories, shout them from the rooftops. I think government plays a really key role in facilitating that environment that allows small businesses especially to tell their stories. And then there's organisations like ourselves which can get on board, provide support as well and help amplify that messaging.
Interested that you use the word collectively, and if there's one thing that I've noticed over the last 2 days, it's the collective power of the group that's been here, and the fact that, for an SME, I'm sure many SMEs will go away from the last 2 days realising that they're not alone, that there's a heap of people here that are available to help and want to help, and the resources that have been brought to bear over the last couple of days, I think should give us all confidence that we can move positively in that space. On that theme, Francesca, you talked yesterday about a number of CRC projects that you've been involved in, and you highlighted how the CRC has actually assisted businesses to effectively prove up the use of waste products and create new products. I heard a little whisper that there may be an opportunity on the horizon for West Australian firms to get actively involved in this kind of work. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So yesterday we sort of spoke for the first time publicly about this new project that we're working on. It's a collaboration between DPIRD, Curtin University and the Fight Food Waste CRC to really focus on understanding the opportunities for the WA food and beverage sector to transform their food waste. So it's something that anybody in this room can become involved with. So at the moment, we are actively looking for companies to put in expressions of interest to be part of that process. And then we'll shortlist the applications and we'll take 5 case studies through a framework. So we have a draft framework, but we want to refine that. We want to apply it to a whole bunch of different sectors. Even in the workshops we've been having over the last few days, we're thinking about doing collectives across sectors who are already collaborating and working together to see if the framework will in fact work for their context as well. So please come and see Phil, myself, Janet, Greta and Monica also are able to help put you in touch with the right all the information you need to be involved in this project. But really it's an opportunity for us to hear your stories, hear where the challenges are for you and your business and your sector, and then develop a resource that we can roll out more broadly across the state to help more and more businesses tackle their food waste.
Thanks, Francesca. And the program in that early stage, in that assessment of opportunity stage, is at no cost to businesses?
Yeah, absolutely not. So we're looking to build a really robust model, and to do that we want to get a really good cross-section of businesses across WA. So it's no cost to be involved. We will do a shortlisting process to be able to choose those case studies that are going to help us build the most reflective tool that can help the broadest range of businesses going forward. So, we encourage everybody to come forward to
to share your part of that story and to let us know what your waste challenges are.
I think it's a really exciting project, and I also think that it's underpinned by some core principles of how we lift the bar generally, and so the learnings from the WA examples will be shared nationally, just as the learnings from the existing national examples are shared with WA firms, so that we don't all have to start from scratch. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. This is about a national approach with some specific WA examples, and those examples in many cases will be focused on core areas for Western Australia, like grains, for example. But it's that opportunity for us to really be, as a nation, sharing our waste reduction journey and our reuse of products. So jump on board, get hold of Phil, get hold of Francesca, and get involved if you've got a food waste stream that you would like to analyse and you'd like to look at the opportunities for that to be commercialised. Ralph, the theme of this session is actually practical tips, tricks and tools, and we haven't spoken about that yet, but as my guys know, I'm not normally one for staying on script, so
thanks for the tip.
Maybe you can bring us back to the core theme. So with your 40 years of experience in the field, what's impressed you over the last 2 days? What have you seen that's different or new, and what's what are you going away from this with as core messaging?
I'm looking at you, Liam. Whoever selected the speakers and gave them the topics and formed the framework of your agenda needs a fair pat on the back, because I thought all of them are outstanding. So if that's you, mate, you can take the bow. And Phil. So that's my first take out, but that's a very personal one just for me. For the SMEs that are here, the fact that you chose to come here over the last 2 days, put aside a gazillion things that probably are happening back at home or in your business, to sit down and listen to us all and to meet others in the room who you might have surprised yourself are in a similar boat to yourself, but certainly engaged with the people outside there in their booths, and reminded yourself, wow, I never heard of that before. Where did that come from? And engaged with them. I think if you've made that step and you've put aside, you're already well and truly on the journey. So for that, I applaud you and thank you. But if you think that's where it stops, I've got news, and it's all bad. Because in 2 years, lots of things have happened, and that's just in Australia. If you think globally, it's been on a very different scale, and trust me, this is exponential, both in the awareness, the consumer requirements, the customers, and when I say customers, I'm thinking of very friendly, lovely retailers, those type of folk. What they've been asking of you has changed. Trust me, it will continue to change and evolve, and they'll only want one thing, more. More of something, more of everything. And where you're going to work with that is to find knowledge. And I hope out of this exercise today, and don't ask me to choose which was my favourite speaker, that would be cruel and heartless. But there was an enormous amount of knowledge shared with you over the last 2 days, not just in this room, but in the workshops, and certainly out here in the networking and with those suppliers. So I applaud all of you for coming along and asking good questions. There's a number of you who've asked me questions and I've said, I don't quite have the answer. I'm sorry. Part of that is the limitations of my knowledge. Okay, sorry. But what I can say to you is, and I'd encourage you to consider this in your journey. Nerida, in the workshops and certainly her presentation this morning, provided numerous examples of award-winning, outstanding packaging formats. And they didn't just tick one sustainability point, they ticked many. And they're all commercially successful, although none of them would share with me how much money they saved on some of them. And I think Telstra wins that bill, and it would have a lot of noughts after it. But be that as it may, I hope that inspired you, Because if you think you're back here at ground zero and you want to be up here at 100%, I'm sorry, you're not going to make it overnight. It is a continuous journey. And certainly with Duncan McFarlane's presentation this morning, he spoke in very much in operational language. He talked about lean manufacturing, efficiencies and the like. Just the same, you could convert that to your business. But what that means is just continuous improvement. And if you think you're not there yet, that's okay. But if you've moved from here to there and you're thinking over the horizon that if you do another couple of steps, this isn't just packaging, by the way, this could be your resources, it could be your energy, it could be your ethical sourcing, it could be a whole myriad of things under ESG. But if you're on this continuous journey, I applaud you. The world is changing around you at the same time. So when we were reflecting on polymers for bananas before and red cycle collapsing, going, oh shit, excuse my language, that's fair enough, because it is an oh shit moment for many of us in the industry. But it doesn't mean that it stops now. Things are continuing to change, and many of the examples Nerida shows in the workshop shows that there's an evolution going on where, and think commercially here, folks, if there's an enormous demand and you people are asking for it, I want materials, I don't want to have laminates, I just want to have single material, I want to have long shelf life, I want to protect the food, and it's got to be cheap, and it's got to be fully recyclable, and you're willing to pay for it. Trust me, there's a whole range of boffins in the back room working on just those things right now. Do they have it absolutely right yet? No. But where my answer to your question, Kim, and yes, it took me a while, got that, but we've got a while, it's okay. Bear with me. This is an evolving process, folks. And keep in mind, the market that you thought you were supplying 5 years ago is not the market you're supplying today. As a number of the presenters mentioned, the consumer is changing. Your customers are changing their demands. And guess what, guys? You've got to try and keep up. So coming to these kind of forums, beautifully organised, outstanding speakers, you're on the right track, folks. But as for ongoing, I'm speaking on your behalf here, Kim, so you took the applause earlier, I'm dobbing you in now. Keep coming back to the department, keep knocking on their door, keep asking them for guidance, education, more forums where you can keep up with all the many changes would be my recommendation to all of you. Okay.
Thanks, Ralph. And Nerida, he did tell me before that yours was his favourite presentation. So. Sam, from your perspective, what have been the key takeaways?
I think this is what it's all about, isn't it? It's about coming together and understanding that no one's on this journey alone. At SMEs, there's a whole set of resources and people here to support on the journey. There's a whole set of your peers that are out there, doing the day-to-day, making the product, selling the product, packaging the product, that are on the same journey with a similar set of challenges. And I think it's only when we're able to step away from our little silo for a couple of days that we get the opportunity to really reflect on the support that's available, the fact that, phenomenal exhibitors that have got the solutions there. I think key takeaway, I think Michael summed it up earlier with that deep collaboration. We talk about collaboration all the time. How do we make it meaningful? How do we take our commercial relationships and turn them into win-win opportunities for our businesses, for our consumers, for the environment, for government, however we need to frame it. I think that's the key takeaway for me.
The mention of the exhibitors, I was really impressed at both morning teas, just the energy that was out in the morning tea area where people were moving around and talking. And, for us, one of the real measures of whether an event like this is successful is, are people making connections? Are they getting value? It's been pleasing on both sides to hear from businesses and also from the exhibitors that in 90% of the cases of people I've spoken to, they felt they made some connections, they had inquiries about orders, so that was great. But the atmosphere out there was, to me it was great on both days. Francesca, how have you found the opportunities for collaboration over the last couple of days?
Oh, I think it's been really good to have such different formats for collaboration. So, have information sharing sessions, having workshops, which are, the presenters are learning from the audience, and then having those opportunities for more, casual collaborations during the networking events as well. So yeah, I think it's had a really nice tempo to it, a really nice pace, and I think the team's done really well organising the sessions.
And Sarah, from the perspective of a small to medium business, have there been some key takeaways for you and things you're going to take back and apply in the business?
Yeah, there has. For me, I guess the biggest thing coming into this was, how am I going forward? Are we left behind? How am I getting this out to our customers? So for me, I guess it started on day one, yesterday, with Adam's speech. Although he highlighted I have absolutely horrendous vocabulary compared to him, but he did make a very good point that you don't need to be an expert, a CEO. You don't have to be up there to start a sustainability journey, and to break it down into small pieces. Like, every piece and change that you make within your business is a step towards sustainability. So for me, I guess coming in here, I almost had a bit of anxiety about, I think our business is getting left behind. But yes, we've done all these great things, but we haven't celebrated them and we haven't moved forward anymore. So for me, that's a good takeaway. And I think I learnt a lot about packaging and sustainable packaging, and particularly things to do with ARL codes. I think it's quite a confusing space for a lot of people. Knowing what the right thing is to do and looking at all the rebranding that's going on at the moment. So I think for me, I'm looking at all our rebranding at the moment, and I think one of the biggest takeaways I took from a session that I looked at yesterday was to put ARL codes with blinking lights on them, because I'm a working mum, I get home, I can't be bothered reading packaging. It needs to be a blinking light. And for me, I never really thought, whatever, no one reads this kind of thing. But after seeing these sessions yesterday, I think it's really highlighted the importance of communicating that to a customer. So, yeah.
Kim, am I able to just add something? So when you mentioned at the start, worried about getting left behind, and one of the comments that came up during the panel discussion when Mel and Rob were talking about their journeys, and Rob said, we've taken quite a long time to get where we wanted to go, but we followed our values to get to where we want to be. And then Mel said, we take this approach where we just kind of dive in head first and just go straight for it. And there's so many different ways to do this, and everyone is at different stages. But I think if you're guided by those underpinning values, your customers can see that, and they know that those values are, you're doing your best to live those values, and you're on a journey. And so whether you have to communicate via putting something on the packaging, which is one way to do it, but something that transcends all of that is that feeling that you give customers, that values-driven, purpose-driven mantra that you're putting out there. And I think that's something I really picked up during the sessions. So I'd say, everyone's at a different place in the journey, but if you're on the journey, like Ralph said before, that is totally to be commended.
If I might take one step, just reflecting on what you said, Rebecca, because you asked me for practical tips and tools to take away. If you're not energised by the last 2 days, I don't know what was going on with you. All right? Everyone was having a great time. So right now, you've got a whole lot of things buzzing around in your head about what do I do next? There's so many things to do. Yeah, got that. And there are. So, tip number 1, I want you to write down what you want your business to stand for. If you go past one page, you've gone too far. This is not a monologue, long bit of literature here. This is something quite concise, but what you want your business to do. That's step 1. Step 2, I want you to share that with all of your staff, however many they may be, because you want to have them on exactly the same pathway where you want to take your business. And if you tell them and explain them why, I'd be amazed if you don't have completely 100% buy-in. Step number 3, because you're not going to do this on your own. Share the same document with all of your suppliers, and I mean all of your suppliers, not just talking packaging suppliers now, all of them. Because you're now telling them that, hang on, our business is lined up over here and this is the way we're heading. This is my business, this is what, and I want you on board. I want to collaborate. One of the key catchy words of the last 2 days of collaboration, bring them on board, because you won't do it without them. And last but not least, definitely not least, share it with your consumers and your customers, because you're going to make some changes, how they see your product when they receive it. And if you've changed something and you haven't told them why, that is really risky business, guys. Don't go there. If you want to change it, fine, but explain why. And part of that commitment, you need to communicate with them. And I'd be stunned and amazed if you didn't get 100% buy-in from your consumers as well. So there's my tip for you. Take the energy that you've taken out of the last 2 days, because you've had heaps of it, but distill it down into what you want for your business, which will be different from the person sitting either side of you, by the way. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay. That's my tip, okay? Not a big task, but once you've done it, share it with those close to you and tell them what you're doing and why, okay?
Thanks, Ralph. Sara, I've got to say that over the 2 days, probably my favourite quote of the entire 2 days was when Huia said, we throw it away to the magical land of away that doesn't actually exist. And whilst it made me laugh, I thought it's so true. We're throwing it away. Where the hell is away? It really resounded around that issue of visibility of waste, and not just visibility of waste when we get rid of it, but visibility of waste within our businesses. You're one of the 5 pilot businesses in the Shoestring project. How's the Digital on a Shoestring project going to help you guys have better visibility over your waste, and how is that going to help you both reduce waste and also increase profitability? So
obviously when you guys came to us and presented us with a business model, we had different ideas in our head on how we were going to implement it. So for us, we all had different things written down on a piece of paper and different ideas on what needs fixing and who's responsible for what, and who's not doing their job properly and all that sort of thing. But when we actually sat down and we started going through the process of the shoestring thing, we highlighted the fact that where we fall over and what costs our business a lot of money and a lot of waste every year is rejections. Rejections mainly from supermarket chains. So for us, it was, how do we stop that happening? Because you're wasting labour, energy, input costs, packaging, trucks, like it's huge. It adds up massively. So how do we stop that from happening? We've got a labour force that turns over quite quickly. So yes, there's product specs and things like that from supermarkets to abide by, but when you're trying to train people every day, every week, hitting your head against a wall, you need something more. How do we tweak a system that we've got to better it? And that's when, working with Duncan and Andrew, we sort of drilled down into, we need something better, more communication to react quicker to quality and what's come into the shed and what's on the product line then and there. So we're working on a system that helps us have better visibility of the stock that we have on hand and the stock that our staff are picking up and about to start packing, so we can make that call. It's not going to stop anything, it gets to a DC, and if they're having a bad day, that's what happens. But it's going to help us have that better visibility over our business and stop a huge amount of that waste, hopefully having that waste impact, financial impact on our business. So, and the stress of it all that goes with it, and training and all that sort of thing. So we're hoping this will roll out into our business and be beneficial. And, Andrew knows that we've got lots of other little things in our business we want tweaking as well. So hopefully we can see some good benefits out of having this within our business.
Great. Sam, in Mark Field's presentation earlier today, he spoke about keeping it simple and focusing on energy, food waste and packaging as 3 core areas. From your experience, how consistent is that messaging in terms of the businesses you're seeing and the changes they're making?
Yeah, absolutely consistent. I think particularly on the East Coast, where I think we had a discussion earlier that energy is even more of a prominent discussion in every business. It's front of mind. I mean, my world is food waste. We live and breathe waste and how we can capture more from it. And fundamentally, that's an efficiency conversation. It's how do we capture the most value from our fertiliser, our diesel, our labour, our packaging, our logistics. How do we, if we can drive that efficiency, if we can capture more value from that food moving through our control, then we're reducing food waste, but we're also going to be ticking off on all of those other environmental metrics, which actually pull that ESG story together. So absolutely, keep it simple. Focus on what you can control. There's a whole plethora of opportunity out there. Only you know what is available to you right now, but we can all do something. I think fundamentally it comes down to value and valuing the resources and that food, a fundamental human necessity that's moving through our control. So.
And Sara, Mark spoke about the importance of some manageable bite-sized chunks and getting some early wins and getting the team enthused and getting the staff involved. How important is that in a business like yours?
I think it's quite important because otherwise you feel like you're quite isolated, like you're going on this journey alone, and then it feels quite overwhelming. So I think from a perspective of getting the team involved, getting them to understand what sustainability is, helps us in our journey to take even just little small steps, whether it's in the cool chain, in packaging, things like that, it helps.
Can I just add to that? I think something we see a lot in businesses of all sizes is there's so many ideas within the team.
Yeah.
Once we can bring them on the journey and they can be part of the decision-making process or at least understand how we've got to the decisions we're starting to make, the ideas are there. Half of the solutions don't need, no offence to the consultants in the room, but they don't need outside expertise because you've got people in your organisations that do care and that do want their voice heard and to feel like they're contributing to something bigger than just their paycheck as well.
Ralph, I'm going to put the last question to you, given your experience and history in this space. This is actually the first time that Western Australia's hosted a food and beverage focused forum on circular economy, sustainability, food waste reduction and packaging. Have you seen enough over the last couple of days, and given your previous comments about the fact this is an ever-changing field, have you seen enough over the last couple of days to suggest that this is something that we should be doing on a more regular basis?
Oh, absolutely, that's a given. If you think everything stops this evening and nothing's going to change from here on, sorry guys, no, it's evolving and fast, as I mentioned earlier. You have to keep learning. You have to keep reading. You have to keep involving yourself with your suppliers, with your consumers, with your customers. The department facilitates this very well, Liam. Keep going. Because there is an enormous need. I think you've heard the social needs, you've got the emotive of the food waste. But in many of the examples shown, there's good, profitable business decisions to be made. And to me, a sustainable business is a profitable business. I don't know of too many sustainable ones that are not. And that's no shame. So there's a lot of learnings, there's new things evolving. The department is an excellent vehicle, as the last 2 days have demonstrated, to bring an amazing collection of people who've presented here. I've so loved that, by the way, Kim. There's been an amazing group of people out there providing you with options, most of them packaging alternatives, to stimulate your thinking. So my simple word is, guys, I'm expecting your call, Liam, any time for the next session, which I'd like to think is in about 12 months' time, and you can laugh. But then those laughing the loudest, I want you to then reflect in 12 months' time how much has changed between them. I'm going to tell you now, heaps. Do I know exactly where they'll all change? No, I'm not Nostradamus. And if I did, I'd be getting the lotto numbers and I would be out of here, okay? But there is a high degree of change and I don't see it slowing down. So, to all the SMEs in the audience, use the department's resources. There's some very talented people here. You're Western Australians after all, come on. And you already have a very parochial view of working together. I applaud that, by the way. I don't like your football teams, but you work together remarkably well. And just from a very Easterner's point of view, I absolutely love the fact that you're more interested in selling to Singapore than you are to Sydney. No, it's true, because you have a different way of thinking over here and I actually admire it. So, back to your key point, this thing's changing and changing fast. Of all the different parameters this group has mentioned, all the presenters over the last 2 days have raised with you, buckle up guys, this thing's going faster, and use the department's resources. So, Liam, I'm waiting for your call. No? Okay, I want to come back.
Guys, I'm going to close with a quote that I saw today from Rob White, who was on an earlier panel, and he said, work with people that you'd hang out with. And one thing that has struck me over the last 2 days is that, I'll only say 90% because I didn't meet 10% of you, but everyone I met over the last couple of days are people I'd be happy to hang out with. And I can't say that's the case at every conference we go to be truthful. But in reality, it has been a wonderful couple of days with some wonderful people and people who share some goals, share a vision for a better WA, for a better business environment and a better environment generally. So I certainly be keen to see you all back in 12 months' time or a couple of years' time. And thanks panel, and thanks everyone.